Well, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you about how we've leveraged our lessons to strengthen our business at BAE Systems. At BAE Systems, we like to say that we protect those who protect us. And we do that as a global company. We have operations in the US, the UK, Australia, Saudi Arabia, and Sweden. And here in the US, we employ about 32,000 individuals around the organization in 30 different states who are working with our customer groups. BAE Systems is a large aerospace and defense contractor, and we leverage some of the world's most advanced technology in our solutions to defense, aerospace, and security. And we do that through expertise in electronics. We partner with the military at sea and on land, and through our intelligence and support services. Now, my story starts back in 2014. BAE Systems was experiencing some significant headwinds due to sequestration. For those of you who are not familiar, sequestration was a tremendous decline in defense spending by the US government. And at the same time we were going through those external pressures, we were facing some internal challenges because we had moved into some new programs and we were struggling to execute those programs successfully. Now, in the midst of all of that, we had a new CEO who joined us in January. And I remember preparing for my first conversation with him, wondering what must be going on in his mind. Questions like, what would be the going-in agenda? What could my team, learning and development, do to help him be successful? And what was keeping him and other senior leaders of the organization up at night? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that we had a very successful first conversation because I came in armed with my data on the return on investment that our learning and development programs and processes were providing. And we agreed that I would start a journey to talk to 40 leaders around the organization and leaders at all levels, asking them three core questions. First, where had they seen our business improve? So what was working well? Second, what was getting in the way? So what was preventing us from being more competitive, winning more business, and executing successfully? And third, what role did learning play in helping us to address these challenges? Now, I'd been out in the organization many times before, and I talked to these leaders, and I fully expected I would hear things like, we need to focus on our adjacent markets, we need to strengthen our customer and competitor intelligence, and we need leaders at all levels who can help us manage through change during these turbulent times. And you know what? I heard all of that. I sure did. But what I heard more frequently and with more passion were a series of stories. Stories about incredible wins where we came from behind to unseat an incumbent. Stories about really disappointing losses where we thought we had something locked up and we had a piece of business won, but the customer didn't think so. Stories about domestic pursuits and international business, and stories about people, our technical experts, our leaders in the business, key people in our customer groups, stories about technology, and stories about decisions, both those that we made and those that we failed to make. Well, I gathered all that information together, went back into the see the CEO, and we talked about things like how we can strengthen that competitive and customer intelligence, how we can manage risk in a more strategic way. But what we spent the majority of time talking about were these stories and how we could leverage these stories of the past to help make our company more successful in the future. And we left that conversation with two key agreements. First, he was all in. He was going to dedicate fully to making sure that these stories were told and they were strategically leveraged. And it would be a true partnership between our organization and his role as the CEO in key leader in the organization. And second, what we were really trying to do was change the culture bit by bit from one that frankly didn't always want to be real open and transparent about our stories, particularly those that were about challenges and loss, to a culture where we were open about those, we were very, very transparent, and we leveraged them for strategic decisions moving forward. So we took all of those stories and we began to write cases, internal cases. Now, I should tell you that we've used cases in lots of our learning and development programs for many years, and they've been successful. The cases were stories about people that are representatives in this room today and some of your organizations. But we were always challenged with this key question from our participants and our managers: would that really happen here? In our aerospace and defense industry, in our environment? We decided to write our own cases. So we set off to gather information and interview people, and we quickly hit that cultural wall. Boom. We got questions like, who's asking for this information? Who's going to see this information, and how will it be used? We had to assure people that despite the fact that it might be a story about a loss or a challenge, it was a good story that would benefit others in the organization. So we developed our program called Case-Based Learning, and we wrote interesting stories with interesting dilemmas and characters, just like in real life. We would cascade information to our mid-level management participants through written case materials, through video, through live in-room presenters that would come in and play roles as characters. And it was very, very successful. We engaged our leaders. So we built it out as a leader-to-leader program. And we had those senior leaders in the room to hear from those mid-level management participants, to be able to tell stories of their own and react to the recommendations they came up with. And you know what was really interesting in our engineering-focused environment and culture? We had some good storytellers, some real passionate, interesting storytellers in our leadership ranks. But what happened next was probably most significant. When we were running this program around the company, more and more consistently, we started hearing people say, oh my goodness, this story feels exactly like what I've got right now in front of me, or a decision that I know I need to make within the next 30 days. We were really seeing those lessons noted move to lessons learned and to lessons applied for future decision making. So from that core program, we've built a whole portfolio of business. We built a senior level executive experience, which we call our senior seminar. It's a portfolio case of a wide piece of business for our executive talent to go through. The CEO, COO, and the head of HR sit in there with me, and we run this program multiple times every year. We've also built out an internal consulting practice around lessons learned. Now, I should tell you that our businesses all do their lessons learned work when they have wins and losses. But what our leaders often tell us is they're too close to the business to really be objective. So they call us in. We use what we call a decision point analysis to look at all those decisions made throughout the life of the project and what are the implications of each and every one of those decisions. And you know, not only do we look at the decisions that they made, but we also look at those that they failed to make. We've written up to 20 cases, and we've integrated those cases in our high potential programs, as well as some training that we do for a variety of groups, including our capture teams and our capture leaders. And bit by bit, case by case, we're really shaping the culture. Now, as I thought about the key lessons learned on a lessons learned program, it was kind of an interesting mental exercise that I took myself through. But let me highlight a few things for you. First, sponsorship. Clearly, from the CEO all the way down, engaging the leaders in the program and in the process really meant that they bought into what we were doing. We've got pull coming in from all around the business because those leaders were engaged and they were invested in what we were doing. Third, persistence. I should tell you that we were not at all surprised when we went out and started interviewing and capturing data on some of our losses that we got that resistance. We fully expected it. But we didn't give up, we didn't roll over. We assured them that although the story was about a loss, it was a good one to tell, and we were able to advance forward and write those cases. Fourth, find your niche. So we already had lessons learned going on within our business, but we brought that internal objective perspective. As well, we had all other kinds of leader-to-leader programs, but this is one where they were able to integrate in and to tell some of their own stories as part of that process. Fifth, don't be afraid to retire and refresh. We find that our cases do have shelf life, and if too many years has gone by, it's time to write more cases and maybe put that one on the shelf for a while. And finally, be patient, because what we're really doing is evolving the culture. It took us years to get where we are, and we know it will take us years to move to a place of more openness and transparency, particularly about our challenges and our losses. Now, Einstein said that the only mistake in life is the lesson not learned. This great mind knew that despite intellect or capability, everybody would have challenges and failures. But what he also knew, what was most important, is what do you do in those situations of challenges? What do you take from it, and how does it shape future behavior? After telling the stories of so many others for the last 3 to 4 years as part of this initiative, it's been a pleasure to be able to tell you our story this afternoon. And while it's not an official case, it really is the story of a team of development professionals that worked hand in hand in tight partnership with leadership around the organization to evolve the culture one case at a time. I'd like to thank you for being part of this experience today, and thank I4CP for the award as well. It's been a pleasure.
Wait a sec. We've got to do the picture, Mike. There you go.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yep, thank you very much.
There you go.